Qingjiang, night of the 7th day in the 7th month. Far, far away, the night scene of the 7th day. They meet there, but only for one night. The moonlight serves as a candle in the open bed curtains. Clouds form a bridge over the Milky Way stream. Reflected in the waters, her golden cap trembles. Facing the wind, his jade pendant swings. Their only worry the night watch and the water clock, urging them to part with the next morn. So we continue with examples of poetry from monks, from Buddhist monks. So Qingjiang, not an extremely well-known figure, is a poet monk from the mid-Tang period, so he died in 806. Like Yaoran, the rather more famous Tang monk poet, he was also from Guiji or Guiji, which had been in the past the capital of the warring states kingdom of Yue, and it's in the eastern coast of China in the region of Zhejiang. And like his predecessor, he also studied at the Kaiyuan monastery there, and then afterwards went to different places throughout China. And during his wanderings, he exchanged poems and met people like Jiaoran himself, Yang Wei, Fa Chao, and Lu Lun. Last figure is important because the poetry for which Qingjiang is famous is generally considered to be similar to the poetry of these mid-Tang poets, the group that is usually called the Dali era poets, of which Lu Lun is generally considered the chief figure. So 21 poems of his have survived to the present, although it seems that the attributions to some of them are questionable. And most of those poems are occasional pieces, which typically express melancholy feelings about personal experiences, about social chaos, whatever. This poem is curious because of its subject matter. The title of this poem in Chinese is Qixi, and Qixi is the night of the 7th day of the 7th month. So this is an annual celebration in East Asian, especially Chinese, but Chinese-influenced cultures. The double days are, or especially some of the double days are festivals, like 3rd day, 3rd month, 4th day, 4th month, 5th day, 5th month, 7th day, 7th month, 9th day, 9th month. The double 7, 7th day, 7th, 9th, is what in Chinese is called Qixi, in Japanese is called Tanabata. So it's an autumn festival, and it commemorates the meeting of two spirits in the heavens. These spirits are the weaving maid and the cowherd, which are associated with the stars, I think, Vega and Altair, which in early autumn, for some day or two, perhaps are visible together in the heavens across each side of the Milky Way. So there's this legend that these two lovers, the cowherd and the weaving maid, fell in love with each other, but they were separated, and they are only allowed to meet once a year in the night of the 7th day, 7th month. So this is a festival that is very typically commemorated in love poetry, and the connection is pretty obvious. Yeah, like the lovers that are separated sigh about their separation, especially on the 7th day, 7th moon, sometimes envying those celestial lovers who can at least meet once a year. So the topic of Qixi, of 7th day, 7th moon festival, is very typical in classical Chinese poetry, trite even, also in Japanese. I remember there's an author that again is not much appreciated, but which I like a lot, Kenreimoni Ukiyo no Daibu, who is a Japanese poetess from the early 12th century, late 11th, early 12th century. And she has a set of poems on Tanabata, on the 7th day, 7th night, and her lover had been killed in the wars. So she empathizes quite a lot with the theme. But as I said, this poem, the subject matter is the meeting of the celestial lovers in this night of separation. And, the poem is pretty well crafted. It's a very good example of a pentasyllabic regulated verse, and even in the translation, the middle couplets are strictly parallelistic. Remember, a pentasyllabic regulated poem, a Qixi, has 4 couplets of 5 syllables each. There are very complex rhyming and tonal rules for this, but the ones that affect us in the translation at least is that the 2 central couplets must show perfect parallelism between what one line says and the other line says, and this parallelism is antithetic, character by character, and stuff like that. As I said, Qingjiang is a Buddhist monk, so the topic of this poem seems jarring, and I think this was perceived by many critics who attacked the author in this poem for, a monk composing a love poem seems slightly weird. I mean, Buddhist monks were supposed to be celibate, and so they wouldn't be generally writing love poems. But they could do so as a literary exercise, and then this happened rather frequently. Again, permit me a jump to the Japanese tradition. There's a poet from the Qixi, which is an early 10th century anthology of Japanese verse, who is Bishop Henjo, who is a Buddhist bishop. And he is criticized, he's included a lot in that anthology, but he is criticized in the prologue by the compiler, Kinotsurayuki. And basically what he says is, Bishop Henjo's poems are very polished and very formal and very well made, but they lack feeling. And I guess this lack of feeling basically means, it's a monk, he can't know much about love affairs, but he's still writing a lot of poems about love affairs and the feelings of lovers. And, classical Chinese literary criticism, and this includes East Asia and includes Japan, especially of the Confucian sort, has as its bedrock the idea that poetry should be, an expressivist art. The exact line it's from the Analects, or it's from the book of documents, the Shujing. It's poetry expresses what's in the heart with intention. And they have this neo-romantic view of poetry, although the image of the heart is misleading, because again, for classical Chinese and Japanese poetry, the heart is not the seat of feelings, of emotion, it's the seat of thought. So for the Confucians, poetry should express feelings, which is basically political criticism and advice, but it should match what the speaker is saying. So Chinese critics, traditional ones, Confucian ones, tend to be very, very wary of completely fictionalized poetic personas in a poem. So things like this, like a Buddhist monk who cannot be a lover, writing a poem about lovers and about love. But anyway, be that as it may, this is a poem that is, just one of the typical ones that you can encounter describing the meeting of the lovers in Tanabata. So the topic is love poetry, but also mythology, if you want. Some people have tried to read into this poem a more metaphorical and more Buddhist, orthodoxly Buddhist interpretation. The meeting of the 2 stars in the heavens, of the constellations, is very brief. And, this could act as a metaphor for the transiency of human love and of human life. So, you can add that layer if you wish. So, as usual, let's take a look at the poem couplet by couplet. First couplet. Far, far away, the night scene of the 7th day. They meet there, but only for one night. So, the first couplet introduces the scene. Well, you already know from the title Qixi that this is a poem about 7th moon, 7th night. But the first couplet reinforces and explains that. Yeah? You look up far away, there's the night scene. So we're at night, we're looking up at the sky, the stars are getting together. They meet this night, but only for this night. Yeah? So it's the typical scene-setting couplet that usually starts a Tang poem. Second couplet, which is the first parallelistic couplet. The moonlight serves as a candle in the open bed curtains. Clouds form a bridge over the Milky Way stream. So again, what we see a lot in Tang poetry is this zoom in. Like the first couplet creates a background, then the second couplet starts to zoom in into the scene, the third couplet zooms into the feelings or even more into the scene, and the last couplet, concludes with generally some sort of emotional outburst. So the second couplet, the first one told us it's this night the star lovers are meeting. The second couplet depicts the space of this meeting, which is the sky, as if it were some sort of a human and not celestial space, as if it were a bedroom and a bridge connecting two houses. So the moonlight serves as a candle in the open bed curtains. The moon high in the sky is the candle. It's illuminating the chamber in which the cowherd and the weaving maid are meeting. Yeah, the bed curtains are open, so the moon is a good metaphor for a candle. The clouds form a bridge over the Milky Way stream. Like these stars are separated by, these constellations are separated by the Milky Way. And the idea was that in this night a bridge is made. I think it's a bridge of magpies, at least in the Japanese tradition. So a bridge is formed. In this case, it's a bridge of clouds, which allows, they might be real clouds that you see in the sky floating in the night sky, but they're imagined as a bridge that connects, a human construction that connects the two lovers, the one with the other, and help them cross the stream. And as you see, I don't have a Chinese version. Well, I do have a Chinese version of the poem actually here. You can see moon matches clouds. And, well, yeah, here it is. As you see, like the moonlight is the candle, and in the second line, the clouds are the bridge. And open bed curtains, Milky Way stream. So now the parallelism is pretty obvious. Third couplet. So the third couplet is the climax, if you wish, of the meeting and of the scene. We have the background, the bridge that allowed them to be together, the bed chamber with the moon as a candle, and now the two celestial lovers are face to face with each other, and we get a depiction not only of their union but also of their nervousness, perhaps sexual tension, in the gestures associated with items they are wearing. So couplet number 3, reflected in the waters, her golden cap trembles, facing the wind, his jade pendant swings. So no, this is metonymy. The golden cap is her and the jade pendant is him. They are connected to them and they are clothes adorning their bodies, but they're trembling and swinging, both in the waters that are reflected in the wind, denoting their emotional state. Yeah, and again, parallelism is clear. Waters, wind, reflected, facing, golden cap, jade pendant, trembling, swinging. Yes, it's very easy to see the parallelism. Finally, the last couplet denotes a feeling that rounds up the poem. It's a feeling of sadness. I mean, you could imagine that it would be a feeling of elated joy at the meeting, but the meeting is only one night. So the feeling that concludes the poem is their preoccupation at the shortness of their meeting and of their pleasure. Their only worry, the night watch and the water clock, urging them to part with the next morn. So the night watch, in classical China, for measuring the hours of the night, you had candles, you had clepsydras, that's water clocks, and you had, guardians who announced the watches, soldiers who kept a night watch and who announced the passing of the hours by beating of gongs or similar instruments. Okay, so that's the poem that we have today. The topic might be a bit trite, but I think it's very professionally, very efficiently developed, and it's a nice poem for the festival of Qixi. Remember, the 7th day, 7th moon.